now that we've got this ported over to use SQLite, use a database, a natural question might be, how do we add new information into the database? How can we add a new user, for example? Because right now, everything has been hard-coded in this createdatabase.js file, right? You create a connection to the database, then you run the serialize, then you run you create the table, you run 3 inserts, and then you just print it out. This should only run once, but what happens if you need to update the database later? So to do that, we're going to use a post request. So a post request is usually is for, posting new data to the server, whereas get is for getting data from the server. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a post request, and we're going to first write some boilerplate code to make post requests practical in Node.js. This you don't actually need to understand, you just need to know that you need to write these 2 lines in. And what this does is that it lets you access the body of the post request. That's why it's called a body parser module. So what we're going to do is we're going to import it, and we're going to say app.use, which means use this in our current web application. So what we're going to do is we're going to first start a new endpoint called app.post. Now this is not app.get now, this is app.post, and we're going to say users. And then we're going to have the same signature for the function, req, res, and so on. Okay, so first of all, I'll say what just happened. I have already an app.get with users, and now I have an app.post with users. That seems weird. So how does the server know which one to use? These are both pointing to /users. How does the server know which one to call? And the answer is the server knows which one to call because when an HTTP request comes in, it tells it its type. Is it a post request or is it a get request? Get request gets run here and post gets run down here. And now the other question is, why did I choose /users? Why didn't I just choose some other URL? Well, you're free to choose any URL you want, but one common style of making backends, it's called a REST style, R-E-S-T. One common style is to have the vocabulary look like it's roughly English. So the way to read this is, I want to post some new information to my users collection. And the way to read this is, I want to get some information out of my users collection, which kind of translates to get me all the usernames in users. And what this post to users says is, I want to add something or post some new information to the users collection. Okay, so the first thing that we always do is just console log. So I'm going to do a console log of req. Sorry, req. Actually, what I'm going to do is console log of req.body, because a post request, you have to get the body parameter in order to get the content of what the user has posted. And that's all. And I'm just going to, res.send an empty object back, just to make sure everything is okay. Okay, so what does this do? So first of all, note that if I try to make a request through the browser users, no matter how hard I try to make this request, this will run the get code, right? And it runs the get code because the browser, when you visit something in the browser, makes an HTTP get request. In order to make a post request, we have to use some other tool. But again, we're going to post to the exact same URL as we're getting from, but we can run this post code instead of running the get code. So it turns out the easiest way to make a post request is to actually augment our front end in order to make that post request. So we're going to go to the front end, which is petsapp.html. So let me go back to petsapp.html. So recall that here you have a name, you can get the profile, all usernames. At the bottom of this file, I'm just going to scroll down to the very bottom. I've actually put some HTML elements in comments so they won't appear in the code. So once again, these are commented out. When I uncomment them and save, when I reload, notice how there are 3 more things down here now. There's name, job, and pet. Name is kind of redundant. And there's an insert in a database button. So what this insert into database button will do is that when I click on it, it will actually supposedly insert this new entry with name, job, and pet into the database. So let's try to write some code to hook that up. So the first thing we do is that we write a click handler for the insert button. So this insert in a database button, what is this called? This is called insert button. We're going to first make a click handler on the insert button here so that when we click this button, it will do some action. So to do that, we're going to go to the end of our JavaScript code and we're going to put a handler here using jQuery. So insert button, click, and the anonymous function is two parentheses, matching parentheses because there's no parameters, the right arrow, and then we're going to end it. So everything inside is going to be run when insert button is clicked. So first of all, let me console.log click just to confirm. When I save, now indeed when I reload the web page, when I say insert into database, this thing says clicked. I can do a bunch of times and it'll say clicked a bunch of times. So this code is running. Good. Now what I want to do is I want to make an AJAX call. So the AJAX call I want to make now has, once again, I'm going to make this bigger. The AJAX calls one parameter, which is one giant object. So this object goes from this line to this line. So first it's URL. So the URL we want to go is users. That's the URL we want to make the app visit. The type now is called post. So this is where it's different. So this means that I'm going to make a post request to the user's URL. Whereas now if you look up above, I made a get request to the user's URL, right? So the URL here and here are identical. The only thing that's different is post versus get. And that post versus get will ultimately decide which code gets run. So I want to post some data though, right? The data I want to post is actually in these fields here, these three fields. So what I do is I say data colon, and I'm going to make another object to hold the data that's being posted. And here, the first key value pair is name colon, and then job colon, and pet colon. Erase some extra spaces. So where do we get the name from? We want to get the name from this entry right here. So what is that entry? I'm going to scroll all the way down. This is called insert name box. This is called insert job box. It's called insert pet box. So the name we get from jQuery, insert name box, jQuery selection dot val. This will return the current string contents of insert name box. So if this is A, B, C, D, E, when I click this, it should grab this into here and put it into the name field of data. And likewise for job and pet. So it's insert job box, insert pet box. Okay, so this is the data we're going to send with the post request. The final thing is we're going to have a success function. And if this is successful, we're going to call a callback function with our data and do something with it. So I am going to just set the status div HTML to data.message. And we'll see what this does in a second. Okay, so recall the status div is down here. It just shows some status in a text format just for debugging. So you don't have to open the console. Okay, so what did this code do? This code is going to make a post request to the user's URL in localhost. It's going to post the following data. It's an object. Name is whatever the name box is. Job is whatever the job box has. Pet is whatever the pet box has. And if it's successful, it is going to run a callback function with by setting the status to data.message. So on my backend, I'm actually going to modify a little bit. So this is the post request for users. I'm going to send, well, let's just leave it and see what happens. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to reload Pets app. Okay. I'm going to insert something in. I'm going to insert someone named Bobby. Their job is a firefighter and their pet is also cat.jpg. So when I hit insert, let's see what happens. Okay. Well, if you look at this, On the server, it's printed name, Bobby, job, firefighter, pet, cat.jpg. So what code ran to make the server print that? It's this code right here. As soon as the server receives a post request, it consoles log the req.body as an object. Bobby, name Bobby, job, firefighter, pet, cat. What happens in the browser? It doesn't look like anything's happening, but this is where the network panel comes in. So if you open the network inspector, you can see that a query for users was just run. And when you click on this, you can actually, if you make this big enough, you can actually see that this was a request URL is users. The method is post. And what was the data that was posted? If you scroll all the way down, the form data that was posted is name, Bobby, job, firefighter, pet, cat.jpg. And the response is simply an empty object. And it's because here, all we're doing is just sending back an empty object. So, but the most important thing is now the server has printed out console log req.body here, so we can confirm this works. Let's try something else. Let's try, Bobby2. And Bobby2's job is policeman. And his pet is a dog. So when I run it again, let's see what happens in both the front and the back end. So I'm going to put a bunch of spaces so you can see a difference. Remember, this was our old call to users. Now I'm going to run it again, and now what happens, look what happens at the bottom of the network tab. Right there. Another call to users is there. So when I click this, and I click on headers, notice how this is a call to users with a post request. And when I go all the way down, notice how the form this time is Bobby2, which came from here, policeman, which came from here, and dog.jpg, which came from here. That data was all sent to the server. The server did its thing and responded with an empty object. That's all it knows how to respond with now. And the most important thing here is on the server, the object was already printed out, Bobby2, policeman, and dog. Not to be confused with Bobby1. Now if you do Bobby3 and car salesman and bear, let's just check if it works. Let's run it one more. And when I run, now Bobby3, job, car salesman, pet, bear.jpg. So now we know that we can successfully pass data from the front end to the back end through this web form here, and then run this code here. And it runs req.body.